Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Tuesday, January 16th meeting of the City Council. I'd like to ask everybody in the audience that can to stand as we start every meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Are there any additions, deletions, or amendments? All right, and do we have anyone signed up for citizen participation?
Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, you want to go first? Yes. Okay. All right, let me get this in. All right, before we do this, I'll recognize Councilwoman Glass.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight. As many of you know, on Thursday, May 18th, 2017, I was charged with a DUI and hit and run. While I'm fortunate that there was no loss of life or personal injury, it was a humbling and life-changing event. I want to begin with a sincere apology to Mr. Streeter and his family. My actions could have resulted in irreparable harm, and for that, I am truly sorry. Additionally, I want to apologize to the residents of District 3, every citizen of Bowie, and my fellow council members. I am deeply appreciative of the support I have received from many of you in this room, as well as others in my life. I have spent many hours examining my life, my decisions, and many hours in prayer. I have taken steps to ensure this never happens again, including participating in an alcohol education class. It is my intention to continue my efforts on behalf of the city I love and hope you will work with me to move forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Let me just say that on behalf of council, obviously it's a serious matter. We appreciate the manner in which you stood up and went through the process, and hopefully it's been a good learning experience for all. Mr. Marcos, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councilwoman Glass. I think it took a lot of guts to put that out there. I'd just like to also go on the record, and I'd like to take a moment to state that, Courtney, I think we all make mistakes, and we've all done it in our lifetime, and I don't believe a mistake determines your character or your future. I think you're on the right path. I think you've taken responsibility for your actions. You've fulfilled your obligations to the justice system. And I think you've taken action in your personal life, too, to move forward and ensure that this doesn't happen again. And I can appreciate that. I believe she asked for forgiveness to my colleagues, and I truly believe that by her doing that, I think it's time to put this matter behind us and move on. I think Courtney's been a great valued member to this council. She's contributed a lot to the discussions and the decisions that we have undertaken as this council. And there's been some very serious discussions and decisions that she's been a part of and has brought great knowledge and experience to, and I value her opinion. I think she's an asset to the city. I think you're an asset to this council. And in conclusion, I just want to go on the record that I support her, and I think she's a wonderful councilwoman. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, I have several people scheduled to speak. I have all of them on one subject and M.L. Smith on a different one. Ms. Smith, you want to go first? Since you have a different subject. Welcome, ma'am. Good to see you again.
Hello. Well, Will, that remains to be seen. Okay. I have lived in Bowie. Oh, before I launch, if you're going to have a flag, it needs to not drag the ground. The city flag is dragging the ground. Get a taller flagpole.
Our flag man will fix that.
Okay.
Thank you.
The recall election. I want to talk about my experience trying to vote. I have lived in Bowie since March of 1974. Within 2 weeks of moving here, I went and registered to vote. I have voted in every election at every level since then with no problem. My city polling place is Community Presbyterian, which is literally around the corner from my house. It's printed on my voter card. I went there this last time to vote and talked with an extremely rude young blonde woman who said, "You're not listed to vote, you have to go up to Ken Hill." She wouldn't talk with me, she wouldn't explain anything. She would not even look at my voter card. So I thought, well, maybe they've changed the polling places and they did not bother to tell the voters. So controlling my temper, I walked out, but I started talking to people as I walked out, and there was a gentleman walking in who had just come from Ken Hill, where they had told him he could not vote up there, and he had to come down to Presbyterian Community. So I went to Ken Hill, where, big surprise, I was also not on the voter list. At this point, I crossed over from being enraged to being pretty strident. And the woman that was in charge there, an older woman, gave me a card and let me vote. Whether it was counted or not, I don't know, but I did get to go to a voting machine. In the years that I have lived in Bowie, I have been proud of the fact that we have an efficient and effective city government. And that has been true through many administrations, several mayors that I've had the pleasure to know. This is either, the most benign explanation is that it's inexplicable incompetence on the part of the city of Bowie, which I find hard to believe. A more sinister interpretation would be that it was a deliberate effort to suppress voting from those who had signed a recall petition. I hope it is the former, but guys, clean up your act. We do not want to have the same kind of problems when we go to vote on March 12th.
Well, thank you, ma'am. I will personally look into it for you. Appreciate your time. All right, the next speaker I have is James Maloney, and he'll be followed by Richard Cohen. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Glass, I appreciate your apology, but I am a member of District 3. I have also sent you an email and directly asked you to resign. I am a 46-year member of this community. I grew up here. My parents moved me here in 1966. Except for several years where I couldn't afford a home here, I've lived here my entire life. And in the last year, I've seen some things from this government that really concern me. Several of those things have been the marketplace vote to put apartments behind there when the people asked us not to. I think that if the people, their perception is reality until something else says something. But I think that there are some problems when the people aren't listened to. And I'm concerned about that. Secondly, I'm concerned because at the last meeting, a woman came up here about the recall, said that she wasn't allowed to be a part of that recall, and you spoke up, and I appreciate you speaking up, but she wasn't allowed to be a part of the recall because someone in the city said she couldn't do it. I don't think you guys had your act together with this recall, okay? I really don't. It appears that way. And the problem is that it doesn't look good. So that's 2 oopses in the last year as far as I'm concerned. The third one was this incident with Ms. Glass. I'm very disappointed. I do not believe that you can represent me if you can make a mistake like that. I do not believe that you have good judgment. I don't believe that it is right for somebody to serve on this council when they have committed an act that, in essence, could have killed me or my children, and we accept this. We accept this in the state of Maryland and in the United States, that drinking and driving is acceptable. It's not acceptable. Have you ever heard of the word Uber? Have you ever heard of the word taxi? I never drink and drive. I'm usually a designated driver. I'm so upset. It is unacceptable, and you can't represent me. If you can't make a good judgment, if you can't make a call to Uber, if you can't get in a taxi, then you can't represent me on a $55 million plus organization.
Okay.
You are spending my money and making decisions for me. I'm sorry, I'm very nervous. I don't speak publicly.
Okay.
I'm very upset.
All right.
And I think that you need to understand that. I think that if you get in a car, driving down city streets, county roads, or whatever, you're playing Russian roulette. The judiciary doesn't agree with me. You don't agree with me. Your comment to the Bowie Blade that this particular action was settled by the courts, in my opinion, was a bad statement. It says that you believe drinking and driving is acceptable. It's not acceptable. I accept that she has done good things. She has made mistakes. I understand that she's done good things. Move on. Let somebody else take your place that will do the job and not get in a car and try and kill somebody. I'm a fellow motorcyclist. I take exception because you hit a motorcyclist.
Okay. I'll have to ask you to wrap up, sir.
I'm going to take my full 5 minutes, sir.
Okay.
I expect to get my full 5 minutes. Okay? I think that that each of you was elected to serve in our best interest. I don't think Ms. Glass can do that anymore. We expect leadership from all of you. Your silence on this is deafening. That you would accept this and congratulate her and tell her she ought to stay on the council is absolutely appalling. Appalling. It is unacceptable. Drinking and driving should not be something that we congratulate, Mayor. It should never be something we congratulate. I promise you that I will start a recall. This will be the second stain on this city because we can't get somebody to remove themselves in a proper way for doing something they did wrong. I make mistakes. I accept that. I make mistakes every day, but I don't get in a car and drive and drink. That's unacceptable. My last comment, since I see a lot of people here, I live off of Church Road. That's my district. You all want to put a huge ice rink over by over off of Church Road. I don't want it. I'm telling you. I'm coming to you as a separate issue. I don't want it. I don't want all the traffic on Church Road. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to. What you ought to do is fix the problems we have, spend our money appropriately, and spend the money that you have. Dipping into the rainy day fund because you can't afford to do everything is unacceptable. I think that it's time to rein in government and do the right thing. Pick up the trash, clear my streets, and do the things you're supposed to do. But we don't need $700 million worth of whatever. But I'm telling you, I'm upset. And I will write the recall myself. I will walk to every house in my district if it's the last thing I do. If I can't get it and the people in my district don't want it, that's fine. You can continue to serve. But I'm telling you, you don't represent me anymore. You can't. You made a huge mistake.
Thank you. Mr. Cohen, Richard Cohen. And he'll be followed by Fiona Moody. Welcome, sir.
Mr. Mayor, councilmen and women, City of Bowie representative, my fellow Bowieans. I want to cry. My name is Richard Cohen. I have lived with my wife and 3 children in Bowie for 25 years. Our children attended public schools here in Bowie. They're all flourishing in their professions as adults. I am a psychotherapist for 30 years. I love our city. I was in this room several years ago as a member of the first graduating class of the Bowie Citizens Police Academy, which I suggest all of you participate in, the Bowie Citizens Police Academy. It's a wonderful training. I have also volunteered for several police events over the last several years. I love this city. I honor each one of you, men and women who serve us and care for us. I know it's a very difficult position to sit where you are, so I honor all of you. Oh, I'm so nervous, and I'm a public speaker. When I read in the paper, Ms. Glass, Attorney Glass, I read your CV on the city website. you are an accomplished woman, and you have invested so much of your life to serving us and serving our community and people in Baltimore and all over the state. So I honor you as a brilliant woman. You're probably the age of my daughter, so I can look at you and think of you as such. I appreciate what you said to us in the beginning, your contrite spirit. I respect that very much. And like the previous gentleman who testified, I feel your heart. An apology is one thing. However, as a father, and thinking if it was my child or my grandchild, we all make mistakes. And we must teach our children there are consequences to mistakes. So I think it's great you're getting help. I agree with the gentleman, Uber, you've learned. I mean, this is a life-changing experience. So, Mayor, I was just so verklempt when I read your comment that I don't think we'll be doing anything. It's a matter between her and the court. I don't agree. We have to set an example for our children in the community. So I think perhaps I don't know if it's resignation, I don't know if it's taking a leave of absence, but there has to be, besides an apology, an example to the children that there are consequences to inappropriate behavior. You're a beautiful woman. It's obvious by everything you've done and accomplished in your life. And I know this will be it has already been and shall be a life-altering experience. I suggest that there be some public consequence, which is what we teach our children. So to have no consequence, it just, 1 and 1 doesn't equal 2 here to me. So I just ask you as a father and as a citizen of this community to mayor and council members and especially Attorney Glass, that you just take to heart what I've said and think about the example we want to set for our children and the following generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Fiona Moody, and she'll be followed by Fran Langwell. Welcome, ma'am.
In May of last year, I testified before the council regarding my predictions on the future of Councilwoman Courtney Glass's 6 felony DUI-related charges. I compared Ms. Glass's case to that of Prince George's County Councilman Mel Franklin, who, as a reminder, crashed a taxpayer-funded, county-issued vehicle into the back of a car and then fled the scene of the accident, all while he operated a vehicle with a blood alcohol concentration of 0.1. His punishment, a $645 fine, and now a run for county council at large. Prince George's County has a history riddled with rules for thee, but not for me. And unfortunately for the residents of Bowie, Councilwoman Courtney Glass's DUI charges ended no differently. Councilwoman Courtney Glass pled guilty to driving while impaired by alcohol and managed to skirt around her other charges, driving while under the influence, driving her vehicle so far impaired by drugs and alcohol that she cannot drive safely, negligent driving in a careless and imprudent manner, endangering property, life, and person, driving wrong way down a one-way street, and lastly, failure to remain at the scene of an accident involving attended vehicle damage by merging her charges, and her punishment, a $645 fine, hardly the consequence for her actions. While she may have not received not guilty sentences on many of these charges, Ms. Glass can hardly plead her innocence. In addition to these fines and court costs, Ms. Glass was ordered to pay over $1,000 in restitution to compensate Christian Streeter for the treatment and rehabilitation of the injuries that he sustained. Instead of responding with immediate humility and making an immediate public apology to Mr. Streeter and the citizens of the city, Ms. Glass instead took to Facebook to attack her constituents. Ms. Glass has called Bowie residents petty, ridiculous, fearful, selfish, and heartless. Ms. Glass, name-calling on Facebook is the only pettiness I have seen on display. It is ridiculous of you to think that you are the victim here. The true fear lies in seeing you swerving down the street after 10 p.m. or the fear that Mr. Streeter felt after being left on the side of the road in the dark. It is selfish of you to think you deserve to remain in your position after the way you have conducted yourself. and heartless to be more concerned with fleeing the scene to help yourself than helping the injured person that you are responsible for. Ms. Glass, you are a public figure, and as such, you are subject to the court of public opinion. You have lost the veil of anonymity that is owed to a private citizen, and you should not expect matters of public record to remain private while you represent the citizens of the city of Bowie, and you collect a taxpayer-funded salary in the office of the county executive. Last year, you missed more than 30% of Bowie City Council's meetings. And while I understand that you have a litany of personal issues that need your attention, the citizens of Bowie deserve better and should not suffer as a result. Step down and give the city the representation that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Fran Langwell? Fran Langwell?
She's absent.
Crystal Medley Green? Welcome, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I'm a little emotional.
I'm sorry?
I said, I'm sorry, I'm a little emotional. My name's Crystal Green. I work for one of the state delegates in Prince George's County, but I'm here tonight because of Courtney Glass. Courtney Glass, I first met her when she came to the House of Delegates as a legal intern. She wanted to work for a black female Prince Georgian delegate, and that was Delegate Jolene Ivey. That was 12 years ago. I watched Courtney grow up, and I watched Courtney do wonderful things, as the gentleman attested her resume says, for someone like this. As everybody in politics knows, that there is a way to move up within politics, and it's by doing a great job, and Courtney is that type of person. I just wanted to also take a minute and say that Courtney's mother was on her deathbed, literally. She called me in and she asked me to watch over her daughter. And that is something that it's hard to understand, but Courtney's the only child, so her mother and her were very close. Her mother helped her do her budget. Her mother helped her take and do everything. That was her world, her mother. And when her mother died, the wail that you could hear from this woman crying has gone for the last several years while her mother has been dead. This child has never gotten over the loss of her mother. Now, I'm not saying she shouldn't have ordered an Uber. I'm not saying that. I'm going with the fact that I believe, just like Sophia Nelson, author of the Women's Code, says, she espouses that women win when they help each other. You're supposed to help people, not tear them down. One mistake, the woman's, in her 30s? Her lifespan, say her lifespan is over to 90 years old. That's a blink of an eye. And while drunk driving is horrible, but the laws are in place. The government the legislature put these laws in place. If she was found not guilty, or if she was given a certain charge or certain fine, that is through the state legislature that have done those fines. And they have found that appropriate, not for Courtney, but for other people. So it's not just Courtney getting over on something or another. This woman has paid. This woman does a breathalyzer 3 times while she's in her car here. She has learned from her mistake. I have watched her. I've watched the anxiousness of people tearing her down. You work all your life. You go to law school. You're a black woman. It's 3 times harder. Let me tell you that. And this woman has done it. And I think it's unfair for people to say that one DUI should end her career.
Ma'am,
Excuse me, this is my time.
Sir, we gave you the courtesy of your comments. Sir?
If your child had been hit.
Also,
Sir?
My husband has one arm because of
Wait a
a
minute.
similar accident.
Go ahead,
is this
ma'am.
Bowie?
Go.
Okay.
It was an instant of a mistake too.
A doctor with malpractice, a mistake. Do they just stop practicing?
Yes, they do.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, go on. Look, would you please, I just ask the same courtesy for all the speakers, okay? Ma'am, continue, and then, you know.
Okay.
I want to move on. to
Okay,
the
I
rest
just
of the
need 1 second. I cannot believe in Bowie that one mistake defines who you are as a person when you're in your 30s. I don't believe that this woman's career is even being discussed over something like this. And in Prince George's County, we see the news. We see the news all over the United States of America. There are far many people with DUIs. Repeated. If the woman had repeated the DUI, that's one thing. One time, she's learned her lesson. I know that's the type of woman she is. And lastly, I just want to end up with one thing. As the first female Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright once said, there is a special place in hell for women who do not help each other. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Ashley Sharp. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Ashley Sharp. However, I am reading a testimony on behalf of another Bowie resident, as I am a Bowie resident. Her name is Christy Lipscomb. It is my honor and privilege to speak this evening about my friend and colleague, Courtney D. Glass, Esquire. If I could use one word to describe Courtney's character, it would be selfless. I met Courtney 7 years ago through work, and we befriended each other within a year like kindred spirits that knew each other for decades. As a matter of fact, I now consider her to be my best friend, confidant, and younger sister. Factually, she is much younger in age than me. However, the steel butterfly is no stranger to adversity and has used those profound and life-altering experiences in her life to further enlighten others and propel her dreams into reality. My kids and I have personally and on many occasions been the recipients of Courtney's outpouring of advice, knowledge, resources, unconditional friendship, encouragement, love, concern, and support. She has truly been there for me and my kids through our many trials and tribulations. Courtney operates from the heart and with integrity. She is hardworking, a perfectionist, self-respecting, and a consummate professional. In addition, she is highly intelligent, has a strong work ethic, is always prepared, well-read, and versed. She works in earnest and tirelessly at anything set before her and has a knack for exercising objectively and fairness, even during times of harsh judgment, pressure, and distress, as a characteristic that is refreshing and not easily obtainable. From every situation that I have witnessed or experienced with Courtney, she relies heavily on her faith for strength, repents, and is spiritually grounded, loyal, and protective of her friends and loved ones. In sum, Courtney Glass, Esquire, is an asset to her position and Bowie constituents. She is overly scrutinized and maligned as a result of self-serving political antics and manipulative tactics. As in the past, she will continue to work hard and move Bowie forward. # stop political bullying. And for myself, I just want to second everything that was said in this letter. And in addition to a young and raising millennial, however you want to classify me, I want to say it's pretty disheartening and actually disgusting to see people want to tear others down to make an example of them. We see it in Congress every day, and they haven't accomplished not a damn thing. And to have so much hostility pointed at one another when we should be working together to build the city into the great, and continue to build the city into the great city that it is disgusting to see adults going back and forth about who should be held accountable, who should be pushed over and pushed off the edge. It's not about that, it's about the people. And if Courtney is someone who has continuously led the people and continuously supported these various groups and has people such as myself, who I can say and proudly say is a mentee, I think I'm doing pretty damn well. So I know I can make my own judgments, I have my own experiences, and just because I see someone that I look up to make that mistake, I would hope that my home rearing and my own personality and my own knowledge will be able to sit me forward to be able to make the right decision for myself rather than to blame it on someone else. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ingrid Harrison. Ms. Harrison. Oh, welcome, ma'am.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Ingrid Harrison, and I'm a proud resident of Bowie, District 3. I have also worked for several years in Bowie, including my work for 2 county council members. As a resident, I stand before you in full support of my friend, sorority sister, and City Council Member Courtney Glass. I have known Councilmember Glass for several years and know her to be a beautiful, intelligent, spiritual, courageous, and community-focused woman. She has a heart for the people. For many years of her life, Courtney has faced insurmountable adversity, but has found the strength and courage to overcome it. She dealt with her mother, her father's, and stepfather's cancer diagnosis and fights. Sadly, her stepfather and mother passed away from the disease. And Courtney has experienced her own health issues. She has missed council meetings because of the surgeries that she's had to undergo. Through all of this, she has put on a brave face and has continued to serve her constituents. I find this to be quite admirable because others in this situation may have decided to quit faced with such adversity. Since making Bowie her home, I have always known Courtney to commit her time to the community and advocate for the residents of Prince George's County and the state. She truly is a servant leader, but even leaders make mistakes. And I know of no other elected official in the city of Bowie that has been asked to step down because of a personal transgression. Courtney has accepted responsibility and has shown her remorse through her words and her actions. It is time for all of this negativity and tearing down of others to stop. Courtney, I believe in you, I wholeheartedly support you, and I thank you for your continued great service to the residents of District 3 and of the city of Bowie. Thank you.
I have three other memos to read into the record. I have emails from Brian Sudduth, Deborah Rice, and Cherry Carlson suggesting that tonight's discussion on Melford should be postponed. And I have a memo from Christy Lipscomb, who speaks in favor of Ms. Glass and encourages us to move forward. Okay, that's the people I have signed up to speak on the citizen participation on the presentations. Counselor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. Am I loud enough? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I've been in practice for 30 years. This is my 30th year in practice. And I've never, my years doing municipal work, I have never experienced what I've been experiencing here the last couple of weeks, and I've never asked for this opportunity to address my governing body client in public in this manner. I'm sad, and I'm angry. A member of the public stood at that podium on January 2nd and made statements about me that were false and defamatory. I did not call the Bowie City Police about that resident or any other resident of this city ever. I do not direct the city police, and I would not direct them to interfere with somebody's right to exercise their vote. Those are facts. A council member implied during the meeting 2 weeks ago that he had questioned me for hours and that I had evaded a response. Kind of like those Facebook videos of federal nominees that you see. That's not what happened. The next day, the councilman accused me of hiding behind attorney-client privilege. If you'll give me just a minute. The quote is, "Hiding behind client-attorney privilege is absurd. We are the client. We can waive privilege at any time." The councilman misunderstands the attorney-client privilege, which belongs to you collectively and cannot be waived by any individual. So here's a transcript of the conversation between the councilman and staff and me, as to which the privilege was waived because the council as a governing body was not a party to that conversation until I suggested that it was improper. And that if this was indeed a city council meeting, the entire city council should be participating. At 11:57 on the day of the recall election, the councilman sent an email to staff. It was not addressed to me. Staff responded at 12:05. Councilman sent a second email at 12:21. It was still not addressed to me, and I responded. And the councilman's email says, I'm looking at city code and it states a person can be appointed by a candidate or campaign committee. What it says is political committee, and there's a definition of that. In question, the group in question organized the petitions and filed a campaign finance report. They don't count as a campaign committee, ? I knew this is new, so it may be worth revisiting. I also just got a call that an election judge is threatening to arrest someone. Let's try and avoid unnecessary drama. I know it's contentious. And I responded, that was at 12:21, at 12:33, 12 minutes later. I was in my office, by the way. I wasn't sitting there being grilled. I was in my office working. And I said, yes, Mike, a candidate or a political committee can, but Awilda has no record of a political committee, which would have required them to designate a treasurer. They are acting as a political committee without registering a treasurer. That would be unlawful and a municipal infraction. Also, no one asked for a poll watching certificate, which would have allowed Awilda to tell them they had to register as a political committee. Also, failure to file a report of contributions by a political committee is punishable by a $500 fine. And then there are advertising restrictions in 6-79, which would have applied to a political committee. So you see, it's a problem. At 1:21, there was another inquiry from the councilman on the same subject. The city clerk responded at 2:19. At 3:19, an hour later, there was another inquiry from the councilman. And at 4:21, I said, Mike, I think you need to stop here if you'll forgive me. I don't think this really qualifies as being within your capacity as a council person, but is more in the nature of a personal position akin to activities when you are campaigning, so I can't really discuss this matter with you further. And at 4:41, the councilman questioned that advice, on that opinion on my part, and said, I'm detailing documented problems at Ken Hill and asking for clarification, et cetera. And I responded at 4:45, which was 4 minutes later. And I said, as I see it, those problems at Ken Hill are not issues for me and would not be addressed in this forum by me, even if they were. And the going forward discussion about recall election procedures would also not be for me. If the group asks to file a poll watcher form, Awilda will ask me. I can't answer them through you, please understand. Councilman responded at 4:50, and at 5:08 I said, and I should have added, if we are having this conversation in your council capacity, it would be privileged. And I say that because the councilman was aware last week when he spoke that our communications were privileged. There has been recently in our national politics an impulse by some elected officials to use their offices to attempt to pressure government lawyers into altering their opinions, bending to the will of individuals, ignoring the law and their obligations, or violating a lawful privilege belonging to a third party. What's happening here is familiar. The council member disagrees with the advice I have rendered and the zealousness with which I have performed my job. He has inaccurately accused me of failing to answer questions. He has disregarded my caution that the subject of his inquiry was a matter of personal interest rather than a matter of city council business. And my interest was in preventing a misuse of the prestige of office for the personal gain of an official or a third party in violation of the ethics ordinance. The council member has attempted to breach the city council's attorney-client privilege and to compel me to do likewise. And as I said that evening, I will not. But I'd like to say that these actions pose a danger to the integrity of the office of the city attorney, which cannot properly function under the threat of retaliation, which in fact has been made publicly against me. Thank you for your time, council members. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Mr. City Manager, any comments? Manager's report.
Well, sir, to change the subject a little bit, we're working hard toward getting the 19 budget ready for our initial review so that we will be ready in April to present it to you. And our people are working hard on that. And of course, our Public Works and some of our Parks and Gardens employees are getting ready for whatever snow event we have in the morning. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, council, you have a consent agenda in front of you, items A through C. Do I have a motion on consent agenda? Moved by Mr. Garner. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Marcos. Any question on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. New business auditor's presentation. Mr. Financial Director. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. For the record, my name is H. Byron Matthews, Finance Director for the City of Bowie. I'm here this evening with my co-worker and Assistant Finance Director, Lola Orangamri.
Welcome.
She was newly appointed several weeks ago. This evening, Council, we are here to present Clifton Larson Allen, the city's auditors for the fiscal year ending 2017, Ms. Eris Coleman, the engagement director, and Greg Bussick, the principal. They will give you a presentation on the financial statements for the city as of June 30th, 2017.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. All right, thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. All right, my name is Greg Bussick. I'm a principal of Clifton Larson Allen. We'll say CLA the rest of the way. It goes a lot faster if we do it that way. With me tonight is Eris Coleman. She's an engagement director. She oversaw the field work of the audit when we were in the field. So, is there, try the keyboard. Keyboard up and down work? Try the arrows on it. Let's see something. Take these arrows. So, I'm here tonight to basically brief you on the results of our audit. This year's audit, our approach, we'll talk about audit results, and we'll make some required communications that are required by government standards. Audit approach. Our approach is a risk-based approach. We take a look at the overall financial statements. We look at the comprehensive annual financial report. Everyone's probably seen a copy of this. It's a pretty nice document. It's got 110, 115 pages, so it's a lot to read in one sitting. I wouldn't advise it in one time, but break it up in little pieces. There's a lot of good information here about the city. All the information contained in this document is prepared by the city, except for a few pages that we give them, which is the opinion on the financial statement. So a lot of hard work goes into preparing this document, reporting transactions throughout the year. Management and all the departments work together in preparing this together. So we want to thank them for their assistance during the engagement. Certainly, with their help, makes the process go a lot faster. So talk a little bit about our approach of communication. Start off the engagement with an entrance conference, have regular status meetings with management, and have some informal conversations as well. Auditor's opinion on the financial statements. I'm pleased to say that it's an unmodified or a clean opinion. It's what you want on your financial statements. So what it says is that the financial statements are fairly stated. There's no material misstatements based on our audit. There's also, we issue a report on internal control, and I'm happy to say there were no material weaknesses or no significant deficiencies identified there. So that means you're in pretty good shape financially and internal control wise. Other matters, we did have a couple other matters that are kind of best practices that we mentioned to management. So one is just updating the city's information technology policies. As part of our engagement, we have our IT folks come in and take a look at the city's operations. They give us some best practice ideas. So we gave them a summarized list of a few things to keep in mind. And then also just to enhance some documentation on some of their decisions that they make with their financial process. So nothing too bad there. A few highlights to point out. Net position. Overall, you see that in the financial statements, but governmental activity increased a little by a little bit over $3 million. The overall business activity stayed about the same as the prior year. Statement of activities, which is the profit or loss of the income statement for the organization. One of the things to point out is that shared tax revenues increased by a little over $2 million. And again, business type activity stayed comparable to prior year. And then within the financial statements, general revenue highlight. General fund revenue, the tax revenue increased a little over $1 million, and intergovernmental revenues, which are some of your grants and other things, were up about $1.7 million. Again, enterprise funds stayed about the same. So these are the required communications I just want to share with you real fast. Responsibilities under GAS. Our responsibility is to audit the financial statements. Management's job is to prepare the financial statements. So you'll see that in our opinion letter. We just want to point that out to you. Qualitative aspects. So in addition to the numbers within the financial statements, there are certain things that are qualitative or soft numbers. So keep in mind, when you read the financial statements, you should also read the notes to the financial statements. They tell the stories behind the numbers and gives you some information about the policies that are followed by the city. Certain estimates. So within the financial statements, there are soft numbers. Depreciation is certainly a soft number. And then the pension liability and the OPEB liabilities are actually prepared. Management actually hires actuaries to do that work. So we rely on the actuaries' work. We look at what they use. They look at the input. We look at the different assumptions that they use for reasonableness overall. Overall, we found that management's estimates were reasonable. Looking at the financial statements, there's really nothing unusual or sensitive for a city that's comparable to the size of Bowie. A few new things that came out this year. Note 7 discusses these in more detail. So GASB, these are the exciting things that we deal with every day that most citizens probably don't find too exciting, but the new GASBs, tax abatement disclosures, really nothing significant this year, but if you did have, with tax abatements, if you did have some sort of deal where you try to entice somebody in and gave them some tax breaks, there's a requirement to disclose that in the future. Pension issues, there was some cleanup issues with pensions with GASB 82, and GASB 75 for next year, will be related to your OPEB liability. So that's coming down the pike. No difficulties in dealing with management as we perform the audit. I want to thank them for their help again. No disagreements with management as far as accounting standards or auditing work that we wanted to do. They were very helpful. They agreed to sign a representation letter at the end, which is just kind of a restatement of everything they told us throughout the audit process. The next two items, no consultation with other accountants. This is our first year engagement, so we were newly engaged this year with the city. Nothing unusual during the procurement process. Same thing with the second point. No significant fines we haven't discussed. Next slide, please. Had a small uncorrected misstatement that management looked at. They found it, based on looking at materiality numbers, that it wasn't significant, and we agreed with that. Corrected misstatements, a few small cleanup items to help get the financial statements in order, but nothing significant there. When you look at this document, there's a lot of information in here. So when you look at the opinion, there's a few things in here that we provide different levels of assurance. One thing is and one thing a lot of people look at is management's discussion and analysis. So what we say there is that we don't fully audit that information because there is some information in there that's looking forward, and some of it is summarized in a different way than the financial statement, so we just point that out to you. And thanks again to the city, staff, and everyone for their assistance this year. And at this point, I'll open up for any questions.
You had access to every document that you sought?
Yes.
And you had cooperation from every member of the staff that you sought?
Absolutely.
And in my layman's term, your result is that an unmodified clean report. In my layman's term, that means we did well?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions of the auditors?
No.
Dr. Trout?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I just have one question, and that's relating to the management letter.
Sure.
What did that say?
If you want to go back to that slide real fast. One was a few points on updating some of the best practices within the policies and procedures over the IT function. So it was basically just updating the manual, make sure that's getting up to speed and have it updated. It's difficult for an organization when you have limited IT resources to keep everything up to date, but the best practice is to have it up to date and be up to standard. We use NIST standards as kind of the benchmark, kind of the gold standard when they took a look at the operations. So there are going to be some things that fall a little bit short, but nothing that fell to the level of a significant deficiency or material weakness, just kind of a best practice, things they need to tune up a little bit. And then the second point was there is an accrual that should be considered and documented for payroll in the future. We're just asking management to document that, what their consideration is and what their thought process.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Staff have a comment?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank this outstanding organization for coming in and helping us out. I endeavored to get a new auditor in, since I'm a new guy here, and I always like to bring in fresh eyes to look at the organization. Oh, I appreciate the observations regarding the IT policies. We're working on that. Just hired a new IT director to help us work that out. And I know, thanks to Byron and his team, I know they worked a little harder because you guys were new and you all had to adjust to each other.
Sure.
And I appreciate that. So we're happy with the effort here, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate the work that you did and appreciate the report. Thank you very much. Item next, Aspen Apartments at Melford, detailed site plan. Mr. Planning Director and...
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to introduce our Bowie Advisory Planning Board Chairman, Mr. Carl Shetler, who will give you the results of last week's public hearing.
Okay. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Carl Shetler. I'm the chair of the Advisory Planning Board. We met on Tuesday, January 9th, 2018, regarding the detailed site plan for the Melford development. There were 3 people that came out to speak against the project in general. One note of concern was traffic. That said, however, the Advisory Planning Board unanimously voted to approve the detailed site plan as written and recommended with the recommendations and provisions by the staff. Again, we unanimously approved it as is written for the staff.
Questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Director of Planning.
Mr. Stevens will present the staff report.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, Frank Stevens of the City Planning Staff, here tonight to review with you the detailed site plan proposed for the Aspen multifamily residential component at the Melford Town Center. This first slide is a general location slide of what was known as the Maryland Science Technology Center, now known as Melford, located in the northeastern quadrant of routes 50 and 301. This next slide is a more specific location of where within Melford the proposed site and building are located on the western side of Curie Drive and north of a future east-west boulevard. The site we're talking about is comprised of about 6.6 acres. To the immediate north of the site is an existing stormwater management pond. To the west is the Melford Cemetery. To the south and on the south side of the future roadway, east-west boulevard, is the Melford House, and to the east is vacant property. This is a site plan that's contained in the staff report. The lightly off-white shaded areas here are the footprint of the proposed building, and within that, in this kind of speckled area, is the proposed 5-story, 583 vehicle parking structure. You can see the building wraps around the parking structure as it is proposed. To the south, in an open courtyard, is an outdoor swimming pool with some year-round grills. To the north is another open courtyard area, which proposes a Zen garden of walkways, a fountain, and some landscaping. The sidewalk out of the Zen garden to the north will connect to a fire lane that wraps around the northern and western sides of the property. And from the fire lane is proposed a mulch trail leading to the historic cemetery, and also a trail from the fire lane to the city trail around the pond is also proposed. Down at the intersection of Curie Drive and the East-West Boulevard is a proposed pedestrian plaza area with trees, landscaping, and a fountain. There is a drop-off driveway proposed from Curie Drive, a one-way driveway from Curie Drive to the future roadway, which contains 4 short-term on-site parking spaces. The analysis of the DSP proposed begins on page 5 of our report, where we've identified the purposes of a detailed site plan pursuant to Section 27-281C of the zoning ordinance, and we've identified the finding that needs to be made to approve a detailed site plan, which is set forth in Section 27-285B of the zoning ordinance. We've also discussed the Melford conceptual site plan and the design guidelines that apply to this particular proposal. On page 7, we talk about the access points, the fire lane that I've described. The access into the garage is off of Curie Drive in this location here. It also serves as access to the service loading areas and trash removal area. This is an enlargement of the outdoor pool area to the south, on the south side of the open courtyard. This is the Zen garden on the northern courtyard that leads out to the fire lane to the north of the building. And this is an enlargement of the plaza area at the future intersection of Curie Drive and East-West Boulevard. The next 2 slides are just building elevations that are proposed. The southern elevation is at the top. This one would face the East-West Boulevard, and in this location here would be the outdoor pool. On the eastern elevation, which faces Curie Drive, you can see the building entrance, which faces the southeastern area of the property. These areas here are the garage access to the parking structure and service areas. The northern elevation faces the stormwater management pond. There's a proposed architectural sign tower feature proposed in the northwestern corner of the building, and you can see that on this elevation, the western elevation as well, and the western elevation faces the historic cemetery. The next 2 slides just are used to point out the orange areas that are proposed. This is the first level of the building. This area is a bicycle locker, enclosed bicycle locker area, an indoor pet spa, and an outdoor dog park. And on this side of the building is residential storage. The orange areas in this particular slide indicate several amenities within the building, which include a community room, a game room, a theater, and a business center for residents, among other items. This is the landscape plan, which proposes 22 varieties of several types of landscape materials. There are no invasive plants proposed as part of this landscape proposal. This also shows the locations of the micro-retention, bioretention stormwater features. There are 11 of them proposed throughout the property to help in stormwater management. There is an approved stormwater management plan for this particular project and for the Melford property in general, which expires in March of 2020. The next 2 slides are the final 2 slides, which show the signage that's proposed for the project. This is a building mounted sign that's proposed above the main entrance to the building. And to the lower right is a monument sign located at the entrance off of Curie Drive into the one-way drop-off driveway in front of the building. And this is also a monument sign proposed at the exit of that one-way driveway onto the future East-West Boulevard. We talk about, on page 13 of our report, conformance with the area master plan, and based on the discussion in the report, we believe the Melford development conforms to the area master plan. We are recommending approval with conditions that are contained on pages 14 and 15 in our report, because the project complies with the findings and the purposes of a detailed site plan. That concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, for the record, Robert Antonetti at the law firm of Ship Lane Horn, here on behalf of the applicant, St. John Properties, Inc. Tonight, I have with me some team members from the development project. I have Mr. Andrew Roud from St. John, regional partner. Mr. Mike Carruthers from Somerset Construction, also a partner on the project. Mr. Peter Falat, the architect, who will be giving some words to you in a bit with our slideshow presentation. Mr. Ken Finley, development manager with St. John Properties. Ms. Jen Hearn, development coordinator. And last but not least, Mr. Chris Rizzi and Mr. Nick Speech from Belair Engineering, the civil engineering company on the project. I want to thank the planning staff, Mr. Stevens, Mr. Minert, for their work and review on this project. They've been with us since the inception of the Melford mixed-use concept, and it's been a pleasure to continue to be able to work with them, get their feedback, and have it reflected in the product that's before you today. Before getting any further on the details of the specific characteristics and the architecture, I just want to take a quick look back at how we arrived here today. As the council undoubtedly knows, back in March of 2013, St. John and the city agreed to amend the covenants that apply to the property overall that would allow a mix of uses at Melford. The mix in the covenants had an illustrative attached to it that allowed conceptually up to 2,500 units and over 200,000 square feet of retail commercial uses. 20% of the residential uses were to be senior age restricted, 55 and older, and it also required approval of a conceptual site plan and a detailed site plan with the city council first before it was filed with the county. In 2015, consistent with the amended covenants, CSP 0600201 was approved by the city and then the county. That allowed for up to 2,500 residential units, 2,600 square feet of office, and 268,000 square feet of retail within the portions controlled by the conceptual site plan. It also approved the Melford design guidelines, which is kind of a regulating document that went along with the conceptual site plan bubble plan, which you see before you on this slide. And it's meant to inform the later iterations of the project as it comes out of the ground. After the conceptual site plan was approved in 2017, quite recently, we came before you for a preliminary plan of subdivision for the mixed-use portions of Melford. That application was for 1,793 residential units, 124,500 square feet of retail, and 235,000 square feet of commercial office. So this is a reduction of about 707 units from the 2,500 contemplated in the covenants and then the conceptual site plan. This application is a pivotal application because it tested adequacy of public facilities, roads, transportation, recreation, schools, fire and police response times, utilities, water and sewage services. And the application was, again, reviewed by the city and the council. It met all county standards, all requirements for, and city standards for meeting its public facilities testing requirements. There are conditions of approval that attach to that application. They're still in place. We're still bound by them, and we will implement them as required. Moving forward to today, We have the detailed site plan. This is the first detailed site plan for residential development within what we're calling the Melford Town Center. Initially, at the time of conceptual site plan, it was called, we named it Melford Village. But out of a marketing preference, you'll see future phases of this project. There will be a retail village, east and west, coming along in the future. To avoid any confusion, and I guess as a marketing preference, we weren't going with the Melford Town Center as the new name and nomenclature for the project. I will state that we had some testimony at the Bowie Advisory Planning Board commenting that we're creating our own town center in conflict with the county's general plan and master plan. That's not the case at all. It is simply a term of art, a preference from a marketing perspective of what the ownership would like to see this area called. Very similar to the Bowie Town Center shopping center. It is not its own community plan center. It's a name that was that was selected by the ownership for that. We're doing something similar, but we still looking to respect the center designations as applied in the 2014 general plan. We're not changing that at all. This detailed site plan the area of it is outlined there in the illustrative site plan approved with the preliminary plan back in 2017. What's outlined in red is the wrap building known as the Aspen, which we're presenting to you today. Moving forward, the detailed site plan itself is 6.6 acres, as Mr. Stevens pointed out. It's for 388 residential units within a 4 to 5 story building. And this is the detailed site plan black and white footprint sheet. As you can see in the dark area in the center is a structured parking facility which will accommodate 583 garage parking spaces, one more than the required amount. So essentially the entirety of the building parks within its structured parking facility. Notwithstanding, we are agreeing to a condition recommended by staff to add 4 spaces on the front entry portion of the site next to the plaza. And what's not shown here, well actually you can see some of it along the on-street parking opportunities along Curry Drive, along the future East-West Boulevard. Within a 2-minute walk, there's approximately 130 on-street parking spaces that'll be available for visitors to utilize, would want to utilize this site. But let's not forget that this project is a mixed-use project. One of the advantages of a mixed-use project is you have the opportunity for people to live and work and ultimately shop when the retail components come online without taking as many vehicle trips, or maybe not taking vehicle trips at all. That would be wonderful. But that's what we're looking to have the opportunities to have for that to occur here. We feel that the opportunity is, it's really, there are no 3-bedroom units proposed. There's 87 studio units, 198 1-bedrooms, 103 2-bedroom units, again, totaling 388 total units. There are no 3-bedroom units, so we feel that this would be an incredibly attractive offering for millennials, for young professionals, for senior age-restricted persons who want the opportunity to take advantage of the amenities, the resort-style amenities, which Peter Flott will go into as he walks through the floor plans, have the opportunity to have a secure place to live with a front desk, with the opportunity for you to park in a garage in a secure space, to park on the same level. That's how this building functions as your unit. There's a great opportunity here for, basically to cater to all age groups, but we feel that those would be key demographics to capture and to help activate the Melford Town Center and the overall Melford project. Just talking about some of the sustainable design aspects, this is compact development. It concentrates density and parking in a pretty tight footprint. 6.6 acres isn't a vast footprint. So what does that mean for impervious surfaces? That's something we've heard over the years. Melford should find a way to be compact, sustainable, and reduce its impervious footprint. Well, the garage itself is a substantial example of that. The 583 spaces is in a structured facility that takes up about 0.88 acres, so less than an acre of land to park 583 vehicles. Now, if you were to look at spreading that out in a more suburban layout where you'd have surface parking, in order to accommodate that many parking spaces, conservatively, you need at least 2.5 acres of an asphalt parking lot. So we've reduced that by at least 65% in this concentrated footprint of a structured parking facility. So that's one opportunity. You see the fire access lane around the outside of the building. That is because of code, you need to have fire access around the building. But what's not shown here in great detail is that it's a 15-foot wide lane. 10 feet of it will be paved with asphalt, but 2.5 feet on each side will be grass pavers. And the thinking is that we're going to allow that, because it's going to be rarely used, hopefully never used for any type of fire emergency, but we're required to have it. We're going to look to have it integrated as part of the walking pedestrian links to the lake to the north, and essentially it'll look like a pedestrian facility, even though it'll be performing that core safety function. So those are examples of reduction in impervious surfaces. We got some comments at the Bowie Advisory Planning Board of the plaza, and this is the first portion of the overall plaza. It's going to be on both sides of Curry Drive ultimately when the other development on the other side, east side of Curry Drive, comes forward in a future detailed site plan. But that is not grass pavers, it's not pervious surface, and that's for a reason. We made a commitment to do impervious surfaces where soil conditions will allow, and that's what the approved stormwater management concept calls for. Here, our early soil borings for this area show that this was where the plaza was fill material, and that's not known to be a good soil for infiltration of water. So I know it looks as if anywhere there's pavement, well, if we put pervious pavers, it'll function as such. Well, no, you really need the subsurface to be able to accept that water. And again, our contributions to reducing impervious surfaces are evident throughout the entire four corners of this plan. But in that particular location, really, we need it to hold up to a lot of traffic, a lot of activity, and at the same time, the soils underneath don't really allow for pervious pavement. That being said, I've walked around the building. I'll turn it over to Peter, but I want to show you the four corners of this project. And that's what we're here for. This is a detailed site plan. A detailed site plan is a specified plan through the county zoning ordinance. It focuses on architecture, landscaping, parking and circulation within the four corners of this facility. It does not deal with some of the earlier points of analyses with some of the earlier entitlement applications, most notably the adequacy of public facilities, which was handled by the preliminary plan of subdivision. I mention that because we've heard comments in this detailed site plan about some of the things that were analyzed previously. While I'm certainly open to listen to any comments, anything that goes beyond the four corners of this plan are things that are kind of beyond the pale of what the detailed site plan criteria of approval are. So I just meant that to somewhat walk us back, and thank you for your indulgence, to set the table for Mr. Falat. And if I could turn it over to him, he has a brief slideshow to kind of show you more about this wonderful Aspen building.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for allowing us to show you some pretty pictures of our proposed development. We're very excited to be here this evening, and let's just get right to it. The project is really like a grand resort. It's sort of, and it's located in a place that has a tremendous setting. The Melford Town Center development has really become a great place. It's got a beautiful pond that really was a stormwater management pond, but now it's sort of like a pleasant lake. And that's on the north side of the property. To the west of the property is the cemetery, which is really kind of a beautiful little preserved hill. And then to the south is the Melford House, which we all know is a fantastic piece of history and a well-preserved piece of architecture. So let me just go back. The design of this building is really encouraged, it tries to create a series of village feel. So although it's a grand footprint, we're creating this series of wings and parts and breaking down the building so that it creates a beautiful sort of village. And like most villages, they have large courtyards and large public spaces. To the north will be the Zen Garden, which opens out into the pool, into the pond. And on the south will be a pool courtyard, which will open out into the Melford House. To the southeast corner will be the main plaza for this property, and that will be like a public space for amenities, farmers markets, and that kind of thing. The building itself is actually a terrace building, so it's 4 stories, but it's 4 stories lower on the north side than on the south side. So it steps down. So this diagram here shows that I don't know if I've got a pointer here or not, I don't. Shows how on the north side there's a courtyard that will have a Zen garden, a beautiful large courtyard. The building has great views on the outside, but because it also has some courtyard views, we had to make a really fantastic place on the inside of each of the courtyards. You can see the footprint of the parking garage there, and as the planning directors mentioned, there's a bike storage area in the orange on the upper right-hand side there, and a big storage area to the left. This is a full footprint of the building. This shows the pool courtyard, the main lobby spaces. As you enter the building, there's a beautiful series of spaces, a grand 2-story space, and then a fantastic community room. One place, if you ever want to, recently we just completed a project at Annapolis Junction, and it's just open. It's very similar to this. Beautiful facility. It's luxurious living for both, for people of all ages. You know, it's the kind of place where it's going to be convenient to park your car and walk right out, right down your corridor to your unit, and then come downstairs and enjoy a fantastic series of amenities. And they're all sort of grouped around the various public spaces. So the pool, the community room, the fitness center, all kind of open out onto this lower space. And then there's a theater and a great mail room, which is really a great amenity for people these days. And your package wrapping, and you get your Amazon packages there. The next level here shows the typical floor plan. The various colors are, the brightest color is a studio unit, the medium color is a 1-bedroom unit, and then the lighter green is a 2-bedroom unit. And then as you can see, we put the 2-bedroom units in the corners so that they have their own kind of private courtyard. There's a nice terrace at each level. Each bedroom looks into the terrace, and the living room does as well. So the building is articulated into a series of townhouse-type structures with some corner elements that sort of create a little more architectural character. We've tried to use the same brick colors as the Melford House for the majority of the building. We've broken that up with different contrasting darker brick, and then the balance of the building will be a cementitious panel, which is a really very durable material and should last as long as the brick. And on top of the building, we have a series of red standing seam roofs, which are very reminiscent of the Melford House. This is the north elevation and the west elevation. We've articulated a corner element on one side of the building that rises up to create a focal point. And as you can see, here's that focal point. You can see how it is. It's a little bit taller than the balance of the building, but it's in proportion with the building. Here's a series of views of the model, the architectural model. You can see the Melford house in the lower right-hand corner, and the datum of that building sort of comes along the edge of the building and creates a series of scaling up and down movement throughout the facade to create a sort of a village feel. The building is set back so that there's a clear line of visibility from the Melford house to the cemetery to the lake beyond. So it's a fantastic urban design. And then you can sort of see the gray area in the middle is actually the parking garage that will be really invisible. It's tucked in, so you really will never know that there's a parking garage in this building. So it really should be fantastic in terms of way to hide parking and create architecture instead. Here's a view looking at the Melford House and then the new building to the left. And then this is another view as you enter the Melford Town Center. You can see it's really got a very nice sort of country view. There's the cemetery in the foreground, our architecture behind it, and then the Melford House up on the hill. The courtyards are really going to be very much like small parks. There's an ample space to run around and chase your kids and throw frisbees and or just relax. This is a view looking from the portal that as you're coming out of the lake into that courtyard. There's a fountain. There's some barbecue grills and some places to relax. This is a view of the pool courtyard. We're at the end looking back into the lobby of the building. To the right is the cabana house where there's an outdoor kitchen. So it's a great place to entertain. And then, obviously the pool is sized. It's an Olympic-sized pool, so you can do your training for your triathlons. And then this is an aerial view of the corner plaza. The road coming in on the diagonal is Curry Drive, and the road at the bottom is East-West Street. This shows a little programming that could be a farmer's market on weekends. There's a fountain shown that will be built closest to the corner. Also shows that drop-off and the front entrance to the building. There's another view closer to the ground. And then this is our goal is to create this kind of sophisticated urban space so that the place has a series of types of spaces. There's the beautiful parks, there's the historic architecture, there's a courtyard of, a series of courtyards, a place of remembrance, a fantastic lake, and a beautiful urban space. And that's my little presentation.
Thank you. So that is our presentation in chief. Our design team's here to answer any questions that you may have, and appreciate your time and consideration.
All right, we'll get the questions back to you shortly. Do we have anybody sign up to speak? As I call your name, if you would come to the podium, identify yourself with folks at home, and if you keep your comments to 3 or 4 minutes, I'd appreciate it. Miss M.L. Smith again. Good to see you again.
Oh, Fred, I remember when these things were more fun, and you probably do too. Okay. I am here in what is probably a futile attempt to ask you guys to hold off on voting on this until we have a chance to have an election and seat a full council. I will say that this is a lovely plan, which belongs in Miami and not in Bowie. It's going to get rammed down our throats. It is not going to ever be welcomed. And I'd like, in closing, to remind you about Dick Logue. Most of you may remember when he was the mayor. Some of you are probably too young and don't remember him. I remember many times there were contentious meetings, and Mayor Logue was very good about, he would push citizens sometimes further than they wanted to go. He always knew where the line was. And he used to say, I remember him laughing and saying that even if people were upset about the issues, nobody was mad at Dick Logue. And he was right. There are a lot of angry citizens in Bowie right now. A lot of them are mad at you. We do not want this malignant overdevelopment. This is the largest example, but it is just one, this, the Marketplace Apartments, the proposal for the Sacred Heart Church. You are changing this community in ways that we are very unhappy about. And in closing, we recently, not too long ago, we voted to change the term limits from 2 years to 4. I think in retrospect, we were snookered. That was a mistake, and we need to revisit that. I think elections every 2 years is not a bad plan. Thank you.
Yeah, before Wolfley. And he'll be followed by Larry Swank. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I want to just state for the record, my name is Dufour Wolfley. I'm a resident of District 2. And just on the full and open disclosure side of things, I'm also a candidate for the vacant spot, so you can put that in the back of your minds when you evaluate what I have to say. The subject at hand is clearly near and dear to the residents of District 2. At present, however, we have no representation. And this project not only affects the district, but it's actually located within the confines of the district. For this reason, I ask that the vote on this subject be postponed until after the vacancy on the City Council has been filled. For those, and I know having had to address both sides of the issues, it's not quite as simple. People will say that the developer has a time schedule, but I'd like to suggest that this project has been going on for quite some time. We heard earlier just the reference to 2015 for when the somewhat contentious move towards residential usage. That was done in 2015. We're talking here about another 60 days worth of time on a project that has been around for quite some time and will continue to be with us for a while as well. I would say that given what I've seen, I have a few questions that would need to be addressed. Everything from ranging from parking to the maturity of some of the plantings that are being proposed. Wouldn't mind seeing the Annapolis Junction example. I'm sure it's delightful. There would be security concerns, I think, that probably should be addressed so that we don't have problems that we've seen over at Bowen. And I would think that we would want to take a look at the tower signage. But I think all of those things, it's worth seeing what the future representative for District 2 has to offer on that subject. I also think this would help build some trust and demonstrate a commitment by the council to the concerns or to meeting the needs of the residents of District 2. So I think that's an opportunity, and ask again that we postpone taking any action until such time as full representation can be had. Again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Larry Swank. And Mr. Swank will be followed by Charles Haven. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. I'll try to be very brief. Actually, all I really want to do is there appears to be a serious irregularity taking place in following city code. And I don't want to, it probably won't, nothing I say will change the direction of your decision tonight, but I would like to get a few things correct. Chapter 26 zoning and especially Article 3, the service volume standards of the city of Bowie, basically require that the city planning department shall not approve or recommend approval of any development, no matter what the phase, when added to the existing travel levels will result in the deterioration of traffic conditions on any such street. And of course, we're talking about Belair Drive. And what I'm recommending, and clearly, from our city code, it basically says that you can't further deteriorate. It says, or contribute to the deterioration, and we're already, of course, above our level C level of service, above the 5,190 that is set as a standard for the city. To set the record straight, what I would like is the request that the city planning department comply with the city code and recommend disapproval of the site plan. The city council can approve this zoning variance and to add to the deterioration of the traffic conditions on Belair Drive, which is already above the city limits, as I said. But it would make it clear that that is your decision, not the decision coming out of the planning department. They cannot make that decision, and the city manager cannot recommend approval. This is a zoning issue. It's your issue, and they're currently in violation of that. And this four-corner issue is ridiculous on its face, because they start talking, the first thing they talk about is 582 parking spaces, and those cars come from somewhere and go to some place. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time. Charlie Sabin, to be followed by Cindy Manuel.
Good evening. Charlie Sabin, for the record. I'm a partner with Thrive Senior Living. We are located adjacent to this site for the Aspen, and we came before you all probably about 30 months ago and sought approval. Prior to that time, when we were looking around Bowie, we were very excited about the opportunity that Melford Village at the time, or now Melford Town Center, would afford our residents. We're about 6 months into construction now, setting trusses, project's going very well. And I just want to let you all know that we're looking forward and hope that this project will proceed. Thank you.
Cindy Manuel. Ian Venus. Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening. As other people spoke, you know that most of the residents, we do not want this, and I understand you're going to push it through regardless of what we want, but I'm worried about certain aspects of this project that I think will lead to failure. There's one way in and out only. I would not want to live by a cemetery, and the pond stinks in the summer. My family and I oppose this project due to the excessive congestion it will bring to our schools and roads, most notably Belair Drive. Mr. Antonetti has stood up here several times trying to paint a picture to all of us that there will be no cars. And last summer when he spoke, he actually said this was going to be self-contained, like he tried to paint to all of us tonight, and they're going to just be so happy in their little corner of the world, which brings 2 points. One, why they're building a skywalk over to single-family homes on Belair Drive. It makes no sense. There are no stores for these little contained world to have to walk over to our homes. I don't understand that part of the project. If you have to have a skywalk, push it down to where Target and that location is, where somebody could go to stores from the apartments by the Cabela's or whatever that apartment complex is called. And the developer brags that they have a gated community with a key fob. My point is, why can't we? Why can't we, the original Levitt Bowie home owners today, protect Belair Drive from excessive traffic when it's already over the zoning limit? I mean, if nothing else, put up a guardrail. I understand we can't use it, but then they can't either. I worry about children crossing the streets to play with their friends. If you could put a gate or some kind of electronic pass on our windows for the people that live there to use it only, everybody else would get a ticket. That would raise revenue for your city projects. But if they want to come and visit us, they can go 301 to 450, the only area the developer put in to improve the roads, and they can come on over anytime for a glass of lemonade. I'm fine with that. But you're forcing something on us that we don't want, and there are certain concessions that I think the developer and the council need to work out for the safety of everybody. and for the success of their project.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate your time. Ian Bemis. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Ian Bemis, and I'm a resident and voter in District 2. My concerns about the construction of this property principally relate to the fact that it could reduce property values in the area. And may, as others said, increase traffic and relate to the general destruction of the community environment, which makes Bowie a great place to live. Further, and much more concerning to me, and I believe others here, is that the approval of this by the council today or at a future date until our representative is seated may represent, frankly, an undemocratic move by this council. I believe that we have elected you to represent us, and if our representative cannot sit here today because of a recall election, ironically, which was prompted by many other aspects of the development of Bowie, then we may not properly be represented here today. Thank you very much.
People have signed up to speak. Before I go to council for questions, there's just a couple of quick things I'd like to ask. Council, there's on page 14, there's a list of conditions. Does the applicant accept all those conditions?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I should have said that, yes. We accept all the conditions and recommendations of the staff.
Okay. All right. Questions you want to start off with, Mr. Garner?
I'll let others go first.
Okay. Who wants to?
No. Oh, you don't have any questions. I want to go first.
Ms. Glass.
So I've reviewed the covenant for this project from 4 years ago, and there were, I spent particular time on the MBE, WBE, and LBE parts of that covenant. I wanted to take this time, which I think would be appropriate for Mr. Router, his representative, to provide us with some details about how St. John's has sought to meet this covenant.
Sure, I'll ask Mr. Rao to speak to that.
Hi, Andrew Roud, St. John Properties. As far as the MBE requirement that we put into the covenants, the annexation agreement, I think that was in 2013. So that was the initial document. One of the people said that this thing was decided on in 15. It was actually decided on in 13 when they changed they allowed through the covenant amendment to allow residential. So it was 2 years prior to that. But when we did make the representation about the MBE, WBE, what we're going to do now is, remember, we're still, I mean, if we get through tonight, we have to go to the county. We wouldn't have a permit for this until about a year from now. So we're talking a year out. But what we would do is we would have a program put together where the WBE, MBE contractors are brought to our facility, and we'd have the architects and the general contractor, which is Whiting Turner, who's built a whole bunch of these things. They would have sort of like a, just for that group, walk them through the plans and specs, tell them the pitfalls of what they'd be, you know, how to bid the thing correctly, what to look for, what not to look for, and kind of give them a, I don't know, a tutorial or a way through of what to look for in bidding. So we're more than happy to do that, and we will do that. But that's also, you know, we're talking about that a year from now when we have the plans and specs. But in order to facilitate, you know, to give a little bit of a push, we would be happy to do that, and we will do that. The second thing that we do is, again, after this is done, and we facilitate like a jobs fair. We'd work with the city of Bowie to have, you know, say these are the different trades that are coming out. Here are the different job opportunities. We'd have a jobs fair. I don't know if it's over one day or a series of days, because it's a fairly large project. And say, we'd advertise it and say, come out if you're interested in this part of the trades. We have these trades coming on. If you're general labor, we have this. Again, we'd be more than happy to do that, and we'll do that. And I'd be happy to put that in the conformatory letter.
I think council colleagues at this time, just to ensure follow-through on this agreement, and I do believe in good faith that you will follow through if this project is approved by the council. I think regardless, we need to memorialize this agreement within the record. And so I make a motion that these covenants be included in the record that we send to the county council. So I make a motion that we include this in the record and send a letter.
Hear no objection. We can do that. Well, when the motion gets, whatever the motion is, we can do that. Okay. Mr. Stebb?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could staff take a moment to reiterate for us real quickly some of the improvements that have been discussed on Belair Drive with regards to traffic calming? If you wouldn't mind reiterating that for us, just so folks understand what some of the conversation is and has been in that regards.
For the record, Joe Meinert, Planning Director. Councilman Stev, I know that the applicant has been working with the Public Works Department, and they've come up with a design. It's not something that I've been involved with, so perhaps the applicant could provide the information that you're seeking.
Mr. Antonetti.
Councilman, how you doing? Yes, we've been working with the Public Works Department. There was a public stakeholders meeting where there was input. A lot of information was shared and suggested by the audience members. As a part of that, the Director of Public Works went back, met with us, made some suggestions, and collectively what is being proposed is 2 raised crosswalks, 2 speed, they're not humps, it's less than that. They're not speed, there's not speed bumps or speed humps. It's a lesser improvement which emergency vehicles can drive around or navigate over rather easily. And there will be 2 stop signs, or intersections proposed, one for Ken Hill and one for Beaverdale, to control traffic and dissuade cut-through trips through Belair Drive.
Can you describe for me the 2 overpass crosswalks that you mentioned?
Overpass?
You mentioned there were 2 particular crosswalks.
Oh, raised. So they're slightly elevated crosswalks, which there'll be signage directing on each side that they're upcoming. Pedestrians, walk, use it, and they sit a bit higher, but it also provides some resistance from vehicles. You can't just drive through it. It's not a speed bump or a speed hump, but it is a traffic calming measure.
Just a raised crosswalk and not an actual bridge.
Right,
Okay.
not a bridge, not a bridge.
The locations of these various traffic calming devices, you mentioned the 2 stop signs locations. What about the crosswalks?
I would have to defer to the actual plan, which I didn't bring with me tonight, but they are spread out incrementally from Ken Hill over to Route 3, where the mouth of Belair begins on that side.
In your conversations with the planning department, do you have a sense of when these will be implemented, these changes?
There is a condition, I believe it's, Joe can correct me, is it by the first building permit that we're obligated to put in the traffic calming?
I think it's the 300th building permit.
300 building permit. I have the
300th
approval here,
unit.
but there's a condition specifying when it's pretty much in the beginning of the project. It's before this main building can be occupied. We're 388 units, so whether it's the first or the 300th, I mean, we're looking to do it as soon as possible so we can meet the obligation and move forward with the construction of this Aspen facility.
Okay. One of the things that has been brought up to me by a lot of residents has been the concern that with certain traffic calming measures along Belair Drive itself, given the design of some of the roads in the neighborhood, you may end up with residents simply taking further back roads behind Belair Drive, in their attempts to drive to shopping centers. Have you guys had that conversation with planning staff, or have any thoughts been brought up in that regards?
Yeah, we had that discussion initially during the preliminary plan when this was analyzed, and it also was a continuation through the stakeholders meeting for the improvements themselves. So we did discuss it. I think Public Works is considering perhaps other measures along maybe an earlier road that may carry some traffic where there's a concern that the marketplace may be a destination for some, and it will. But overall, our obligation was to focus on Belair Drive to provide enough calming there, which would have the maximum effect. Could there be some other routes people could take? Certainly, but we think overall the combination, the package that we're providing is going to be a significant enough dissuader of people from making cut-throughs to get to other places. So while it won't stop, it's not meant to keep. It's not. Sorry. It's not meant to stop 100% of vehicle for people, residents or workers from accessing other parts of the city. That's not the intent. The intent is to calm speeds and to dissuade cut-through trips. And we feel that this is the most effective package and responds to the comments we received at the stakeholders meeting.
Perhaps your client would be in a better position to address this, but we've had a lot of residents reach out to us via email and in person asking for us to delay tonight's decision by 2 months or so until the council person whose district this development would be located in would be seated. Perhaps your client can best answer this, but would that substantially impact you guys in a colossally negative way if we delayed our decision by 2 to 3 months?
Yes, and for reasons, probably big picture reasons in terms of the calendar. As the covenants state, the detailed site plan comes to the council first before we can file with the county. So we haven't filed with the county, we haven't pre-filed, we don't have a number. The council's to review it, not to unreasonably withhold it, the approval of it. We've come forward based on the prior entitlements that have been reviewed and endorsed by the city. We've come up with this package which conforms with the guidelines for both the Melford Town Center and for the zoning ordinance. So we feel like we've provided an application that touches on everything. Mm-hmm. In terms of time frame, the county process takes at 8 to 10 months, 6 to 8 months if you're moving with a maximum alacrity to get through the process. If you wait 60 days, this is an election year under state law, the council cannot take zoning action, I think beyond the last day they meet as the district council in October. So we're already on a tight time frame. I mention that because if we were to wait for an election for somebody for the open district seat, that would potentially push us into next year in terms of filing with the county. We mentioned that in its totality. We feel that we have conformed with the prior entitlement approvals that this council's endorsed since 2013, and in reliance on those previous approvals the council's endorsed, the applicant has spent well over $3 million in planning and soft costs and moving through the conceptual site plan, the preliminary plan of subdivision, the detailed site plan for infrastructure, the detailed site plan for the Aspen. There's a lot of money that's been spent on reliance on the previous council action. So in totality, given the time constraints and what has been spent and what is being provided and how it conforms to the previous approvals, I think in totality it would be an unreasonable expectation to delay this beyond tonight.
Well, there's no doubt that your client has made a lot of investments and has been working on this a long time. And I will say, to your client's credit, they have done a lot more than a lot of developers, right, as far as the money they've put in for road improvements and things like that, and I think that's to their credit. I've talked to a lot of our residents who served on various committees who've worked with them in the many hearings, and they've always said the same thing. Say what you will about, the merits of the project, these guys have always been, pretty good to work with. Okay, that gives me something to think about. As another resident pointed out earlier, this has been going on for a very long time. I'm gonna have to spend the next couple minutes and think about, my own thoughts on delaying it, but I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, and I want to thank my colleagues for speaking this evening, as well as all the residents from the great city of Bowie coming out tonight to speak and showing your participation and your concern for our community. I also wanted to thank St. John's Properties and all for coming forward this evening, and I want to echo a comment that was made by Councilmember Estev. There have been a number of developers that have come into Bowie and which have had meetings with myself and all, and I can say this gentleman Andrew Rao, I want to commend you for getting really involved in our community. I understand that you are a member of our City of Bowie Economic Development Committee, as well as the Bowie Chamber, and to where St. John's is really poured and committed to being a part of our community and making this a project that we all could be proud of. However, I do have a bit of concerns, as I've always have, and I do want to voice those concerns. Prior to being the at-large council member, I sat in Ms. Glass, my colleague, Ms. Glass's seat as the District 3 council member. And many of the residents of the Longleaf community were opposed to this project, which I couldn't really understand why, because they sit on the other side of 50, which is a massive highway dividing the two communities. And I couldn't understand why they would be have an issue with this project as a whole. Now, now being the at-large council member, I receive a lot of emails. I have gone out to many of the residents' homes. I've walked the walkways and communities such along Belair Drive, and it is a concern of mine that the traffic count is a bit high. And I've shared this with Mr. Rao and St. John's Properties, as well as the community members. I do have concern that the traffic count is going to be a bit substantial, as I understand that it is now, with just having one entrance to provide exit as well as entering the community. That does concern me, especially when we're talking about our aging population that is going to be living over there, that will have needs to reach and possibly for emergency care and being escorted out of the community. Yes, I agree, it is a contained project, it is contained, but people do need to leave as well as enter. So I do have concerns about Belair Drive. I really do have concerns. I cannot state how concerned I am. And those residents along Belair Drive and their quality of life will be impacted, in my opinion, to the negative. So I do have a concern. The project itself, I think it is great. It's self-contained. I've spoken with former mayor and chair of the Environmental Advisory Committee, Gary Allen, who is an advocate of the project. He says he thinks it's great. It will eliminate a number of cars on our roads here in Bowie because it is self-contained and because you are planning an entire environment with both retail, restaurants, and entertainment. I see all of that. Hear me out, everyone. I see all of that, and I still can't stress to you my concern about Belair Drive. The project is at a point along the path to where it cannot be stopped. We cannot stop this project. There is nothing we can do to stop this project. So this project is going forward. What I'm hopeful to do is that, as I mentioned earlier, Mr. Rao and St. John's Properties have been great corporate partners throughout this entire process. I'm hopeful that we, the City of Bowie, the county, St. John's Properties, can collectively work to try and making this process much easier for those residents along Belair Drive, who are my constituents. I'm no longer District 3, I am at large. So I do have a concern for all of our residents here in the City of Bowie. And where I love the project, I love everything that it's gonna bring. I love the impact that it will have to the positive on our tax revenue for the overall bottom line of the City of Bowie. But I do have to tell you, I have concerns about the traffic count along Belair Drive. I do have major concerns about that. We've got to do something about that, Mr. Rao, as we continue to move down this. We have got to. And also, I wanted to echo the words of my other colleague, Courtney Glass here. I'm a business person, I'm a minority. And Mr. Rao and I have had a number of conversations to where I like to see with this project, because this is a multi-billion-dollar project, I like to see local businesses, small businesses, mom and pops that have been here in Bowie operating through the good and bad times to also benefit from this so that we can hire local residents to help build this project, for plumbing, to electrical, to concrete, to appliances, to carpeting, to draperies, you name it. We have a number of great, talented residents here in the city of Bowie, so that are minority, as in women, Hispanic, Black, Asian, that we could just reach our arms out and touch them and get them involved in the community project, something this size. I heard my council colleague, Mike at staff, asking if we would consider a delay of the vote. I'll share this with the residents here. I personally do not believe we should delay the vote. Why? Government continues to run in the absence. If we have a congressional member that is not seated, or a Senate member on a national level, we do not stop health care. We do not stop funding our schools. We continue. There's a continuity or redundancy that is in place with government so that government continues to function, as well as we have here within city government. So I know that there are a number of individuals who would like to see the delay of this in hopes of having a council member vote one way or the other, but I strongly want to say, everyone out here, this project is moving whether this individual is here or not. The only way basically to stop it is to lie in front of the bulldozers, that we don't really want to do that. But this project here, I really want to say, again, where I've met with a number of developers, and everyone who knows me in this audience tonight know that I have not been supportive of most development projects. But I do believe that this project with St. John's Properties and the gentleman that's representing them, Andrew Rao, is a fine gentleman and a fine project, and I do believe that they have Bowie residents in mind. I just would love for you, I need for you to give much more attention to the residents along Belair Drive and the traffic. I implore you to take another look at that and making that better. But I do want to go back lastly to my colleague Courtney Glass for the sake of time, and I know I have other colleagues that have to talk tonight. Thank you, Courtney, for looking out for the local small disadvantaged businesses, as well as the women-owned businesses and the minority-owned businesses. It is imperative. I do want that put written into record tonight. I know Mr. Rao might scream, but I would like to even go to percentage levels. And as you move forward with this process, Mr. Rao, as you mentioned, you said that you guys would call vendors forward. It would be great if you call vendors forward as you start with your project, that are women-owned and minority, and those that have Bowie addresses and zip codes in the actual municipality, and then, outside of those. But I would really love to see a spark of energy here within the Bowie community, because if the residents of Bowie are going to be inconvenienced by the trucks going down Belair and along Route 50 and Route 3, I'd like them to be involved in the benefits as well. And that's just where I am. Thank you all. You may disagree with me, but do know that I do vote, and always keep in mind the residents of Bowie, because you are my customer first and foremost, Bowie residents. Thank you very much.
Dr. Trout?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff, I'd like to ask you about traffic calming measures. Has anyone looked at chokers?
I sat down with the Public Works Director. That was considered, but the chokers are restrictive of traffic, and sometimes can be so restrictive that it would be an impediment to the neighbors who live on Belair Drive. And I can attest to the fact that Mr. Stefanos worked diligently with the developers, and he believes that the stop signs and the raised crossings and the other devices will in fact slow down the traffic, but won't be an impediment to the neighborhood, which is what chokers could be.
The reason why I asked that, and thank you for the response, Mr. City Manager. The reason why I asked that is because I've seen where chokers have worked extremely well. Not only in Greenbelt on Hanover Drive, you have chokers there, you have circles, have a combination of both. Also, when you look at Lake Arbor has, on their main street, has chokers, and it works extremely well. And chokers do restrict the traffic, and that's what we want to do. We really want to restrict the traffic on Belair Drive. So I would hope that we would reassess that and look at different traffic calming measures. Certainly, I would strongly hope that we would not go with humps, not humps, the bumps, go with the bumps.
Right.
Because that does slow down public safety vehicles, i.e. fire, police,
Right.
et cetera. And being on the board for the fire department, it doesn't do any good for our equipment as far as long-term stability by having the bumps, not the humps. The humps are a little bit more pleasing or less intrusive on the fire equipment, and also
We'll take
police.
a second look at the chokers. I'll ask George to take a look at it.
I think that's something we really need to look at, because the key thing here is we want to restrict the traffic. And another thing I think we ought to do, we ought to look at getting together with the proper agency to look at restricting all trucks on Belair Drive. We need to look at that. There are ways that you can reduce the traffic by using other measures, which I don't think we've looked at. Another thing which we should be talking to Mr. St. John and Mr. Rao is with regard to Wastewater service. And I understand that that there's a threshold. You have to meet a certain amount of people that are living there in order for Ramada to come in with bus service. I get that. But by the same token, we need to know what that threshold is, and we need to have a commitment from Ramada to say, hey, look, when we reach this particular threshold, we would like you to immediately have bus service there. Because bus service, if you have bus service, that's going to reduce the number of car trips. It just goes hand in hand. So we need to look at those particular things as well, and I haven't heard anything about those things. And I attended the Bowie Advisory Planning Board meeting last Tuesday because it's not my district, and I wanted to get an idea of what the district, what the folks in District 2 wanted, because I'm in District 4. And it's just like I know my district, but I really don't know all the nuances about District 2, just like the rest of the council doesn't know all the nuances about what's going on in District 4. That's the reason why we have individual council members for each one of the 4 districts. And it gives you the opportunity that you have 4 votes. Each resident has 4 votes, which brings me to the other concern. That was my first concern, was the traffic. The other concern I have is by not having District 2 representation, this really bothers me because the project is in District 2. Right. If it was in District 4, I wouldn't have a problem with, because it doesn't affect everybody in District 4 would still have 4 votes, but everybody in District 2 doesn't have 4 votes. They have 3 votes right now, which is the reason why I had asked at least 4 weeks ago, could we postpone this? Because I knew this was going to be a problem. But obviously, you know, there's factors that are beyond my control, beyond the things that I can do. So, in essence, the prevailing thought was we could not prolong this. And when I'm talking about prolonging it, I've already done the homework. It would be that a new council member would be sworn in on March the 19th, because you have the election on the 12th. The next Monday is March the 19th, which is where you can sign a new council. And I articulated all that. But nevertheless, that's not where we're at right now. And you heard the Mayor Pro Tem say that this project has to be voted on tonight. Another thing that I would like to make sure, and I'm strictly talking to your staff, you and your staff, Mr. City Manager, in addition to the MBEs and WBEs, and also having local contractors from Bowie and contractors from Prince George's County, I think we ought to have these folks be sought after first. They should be on the priority list before getting somebody from Anne Arundel County or getting somebody from Baltimore County. Now, if you can't find anybody in Prince George's County, you can't find anybody in Bowie that can do this contracting service, then that's a different story. But I don't think that's the case. That's just my own personal bias on that. At the Bowie Advisory Planning Board, this was brought out, and I'd like to get some clarification on this. And this goes back to, and this was from my notes, on 2035 plan. The 2035 plan, it looks at this particular development as a village. It's a village center. Now, there's a distinct difference between a village center and a town center. And so I heard what the applicant has said, that from a marketing standpoint, they would rather have it be called a town center as opposed to a village center. I need to get clarification in the document that if it's going to come through, that we're going to vote on is yes. We need to have something in that document which delineates the fact that this is being called a town center, but in actuality, it is a village center. Because what's happening now could be lost 5 years, 10 years downstream. If we don't make the clarifications now, then we're going to be behind the ball 5, 10 years downstream. So we really need to do our due diligence in making sure, if in fact it is going to be called a town center because of marketing aspects, there need to be some delineation that says that this is actually a village center, even though the signage may say a town center. It needs to be in the document. Parking spaces. I heard that there was one from the applicant tonight. I heard that there was one additional parking space. From the meeting that I attended last week, if I'm not mistaken, there are 12 handicap parking spaces. Since you're saying you're going to do an additional parking space, I would request that that additional parking space be a handicap space as opposed to just being a general parking space. Because we need to make sure that we have full access for anybody that's handicapped. And my way of looking at it and what the eyeball test tells me, just throughout the city, we don't really have enough handicap spots throughout the city. And I know because of what the county has said as far as what is required, that is generally the minimum and not the maximum. So we need to make sure that we could take care of that. Since you're going to add a parking space, just make that extra parking space a handicap space.
Councilmember, if I could, just briefly, in terms of the handicap distribution, we have an equal number on each level, but in addition, an accommodation that's made, and I believe it's state law, but that if you have somebody with limited mobility or means of living in a facility such as this, and they request a special accommodation, what we do and what we will do is have an assigned space for that person in addition to a handicap space. So there's that additional opportunity if the demand requires it. So we want our residents to be comfortable, happy, and proximate to their unit, so they don't have to walk an egregious distance to get to and from where they want to go. So that is part of the overall availability for assigned parking spaces in that circumstance where somebody doesn't have an available handicap space and they need one because of their limitations. One can be assigned to them.
Okay, so you're talking in general, I'm talking specific.
I'm specifically for this facility in this garage. That's an available option.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding you. I thought I heard you said that you had you were going one particular space over the required amount. Did you not say that?
I was saying for the overall count within the garage.
That's right.
We have one space beyond what the requirement is for all parking spaces.
That's right.
Just in the garage.
That's right.
But to your point, about.
Do you have any objection to making that?
All I'm asking you to do, since you're saying that
I didn't understand, I'm sorry.
Okay. Since you're going to do one extra parking space, all I'm asking you to
Yes,
do is
that's
make
fine.
that handicap.
That's fine. We'll agree to do that. That's
Okay.
fine. Thank you.
All right. And also, with regard to Ramada, like I said, I understand that there's a certain threshold that has to be met in order for Ramada to initiate service, which makes sense. I mean, if there's only 10 people, or let's say 100 people, then that Ramada is not going to, send bus service there. But we need to be looking at it in the future. We need to put Ramada on notice that this is something that we like to see happen once that threshold is met. And here again, maybe you can tell staff what the threshold is in the council, because I don't know what the threshold is. But there's obviously a certain number that Ramada is looking at before they will initiate Ramada service. So what we need to do, one, find out what that threshold is, and two, put them on notice like a letter of intent. Yeah, that's what we need to do, and not wait until the threshold is met and then start to try to initiate the process, when we could also be proactive and initiate the process early on, even though we know that the threshold, a certain amount, has to be met in order for Ramada to come in. If we don't do that up front, then we're going to lose on the back end, because it's going to take them time to do it anyway. So we need to be proactive in this, so that we know that when we reach that threshold, they already have the mindset, oh yeah, these guys here, they're up on the list. It goes like with state projects. For road projects, you've got to be at the top of the list in order for a road project to happen. Same thing with schools. You need to be at the top of the list if you want a school. If you're number 14, you're not going to get a school. If you're number 1, 2, or 3, then you're going to get a school. All that is being proactive and making sure that we get what is needed for the residents in a timely manner. That's all I'm asking. I think that's reasonable. So with regard to the MBEs, just to recap, and the WBEs, and also as Mayor Pro Tem had mentioned, because I have this on my list, we need to also have in any document that's going to come forward that we need to make sure that we have a certain, the Mayor Pro Tem said a certain percentage. I'm just saying we need to make sure that we're looking at contractors in Bowie and contractors in Prince George's County before we're looking at contractors in La Plata, Baltimore, and Arundel County. We need to take care of our own first before we go out and give these bids to folks that do not live in our area, folks who do not have jobs, who do not have employment opportunities in our area. Our unemployment rate in a recent publication that just came out to the council is 5.5%. I like to see that number go down, and that number can go down if we in fact utilize the services, the contractors in Bowie first, as opposed to looking at going somewhere else. So that needs to be in any type of a document that is going to go forward. Also, there was some concern at the Bowie Advisory Planning Committee, and I don't know if the concern is correct, but the line of sight was questioned between Melford House and also the cemetery on that corner. It seems as though, looking at it from the diagram that we saw last Tuesday, on the 9th, it looks as though it wasn't a direct sight. So I'm not really sure about that, because you really couldn't capture whether or not it was a direct sight, line of sight with regard to that corner where the Melford House is. When you look straight ahead, can you see the cemetery? So we need to get some clarification on that, because I'm getting two different stories. I'm getting from residents who are over there that some of it is occluded, and then I'm hearing on the other hand that it's not. So I'd like to get some clarification on that. And definitely, we need, don't want to repeat myself, but this is something that we need to make sure that this occurs, because in that 2035 plan, it really talks about what is a town center. And here again, this here is a village center, but instead we want to market it as a town center. And that gets to be convoluted, gets to be confusing, and I don't like to be confused.
I don't mean to confuse the subject. With regards to the view shed, so this is the conceptual site plan. This is where the view sheds at the historic house. It does sit on the highest point in the project, so it is visible, but there were two protected view sheds that were meant to be adhered to and not interfered with. The one long gray area from the star in the center, that's where the Melford house is, that's looking towards the big regional lake and towards the river. But the other one is the cemetery.
Do you have a pointer that you can point that out, please?
I don't. I'm trying to.
Well, use the mouse.
Oh, here you go. Sorry. There you go. So here is the view shed to the cemetery. The cemetery is here. The building is here. We are, pursuant to the design guidelines for Melford, we're not allowed to build any structures in the view shed, and this doesn't propose to do that. So you will be able to see from the front of the Melford house to the historic Duckett Cemetery. That will not be interfered with. But development around the project is part of the concept. So, but that view shed and the view shed to the river will be, they will be adhered to pursuant to the design guidelines, and we have respected those and will continue to respect them. With regards to the center designation, 2035 plan placed Melford inside the local town center designation. It's one of multiple town centers throughout the county that has a significant land use component to it in terms of density, retail square footage, office square footage, FAR, et cetera.
Right.
So it is not a village center. It's part of the Bowie local town center. What's confusing is I guess the Melford Town Center moniker, but I just want to outwardly state it is not our intent to create a separate town center from the general plan perspective. Not at all. It's a marketing naming tool.
Right.
People don't know necessarily that the local town center designation is a general plan, community plan term of art. We're not meaning to replicate that or create a new one. We are part of the Bowie local town center pursuant to Plan 2035. So I just want to go on the record and make that abundantly clear. Our name is just a name, just like the Bowie Town Center Shopping Center is just a name. It doesn't denote a new separate town center pursuant to the general plan. So apologize for any confusion, and the long view of it, which this developer is looking at from a marketing perspective, this is the right name for this place that they're creating. But I don't mean to confuse it with the general plan. So hopefully that distinction makes sense.
Well, I thought I said exactly what you said. I understood that. My opposition is 10 years from now, if you call that a town center, when it's actually like, it's almost like a LAC, like a local activity center. It's along those lines. If we call it a town center now, and we don't give a footnote to the fact that it actually is a village center, 10 years from now, people will actually think that it is a town center, and it could be misconstrued.
For purposes of clarity, I'd accept any footnote to that extent to explain it.
That's all I'm asking.
Fair enough. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marcos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll save everybody time. My questions were answered. Thank you.
Oh. All right. Well, before we go to see if there's a motion we can put on the table, I'd like to thank everybody for their input on this. I thank the planning board and staff for a lot. This has been an ongoing issue, an ongoing matter for a number of years. Matter of fact, some of you guys have been around for a long time, realize that this project predates all of us. The original University of Maryland Science and Tech Center started in the 80s and just kind of moves on. Did you have something you wanted to comment
I
on?
did, just for clarity to Councilman Trout's comment, as far as the LBEs, we're more than happy to do that and include those in with the WBs and the MBs. But this is not a public job, this is a private job. So when you talk about the percentages, that's appropriate and it's norm in the public sector. But on the private sector, we have to go for private finance, and the banks and the lenders aren't going to accept that condition as they would on the public side for the financing. So we can go through, like we did with the original intent of the document, which is the negotiated covenant amendment that we had back in 2013, which we all agreed on back in 13. This was it. Tonight, I'm agreeing to do all those things that I said before to Councilwoman Glass's comment about opening it up with the, and I'll put it in writing, that we'll have the sort of the tutorial and have the LBEs, MBEs, WBs come in, have a sort of a multi-day session with the architect and the contractors to go through so they sure get a tight bid and they understand what they got to look carefully at, what not to look carefully at. Like, it'll really be a tight bid. More than happy to do that. Same thing with the jobs fair, but I cannot put in a percentage because this is a private job, not public funding.
I didn't ask for the percentage.
Well,
The
I
Mayor
heard
Pro
it.
Tem did.
I heard you.
didn't ask for it.
Okay, just for, the only reason I did it was
You
for
have to
sake
address
of,
that aspect to the Mayor Pro Tem, because I didn't ask that.
we just did it for the sake of clarity, all right?
Okay.
Just, okay.
All right. All right, again, really brief, come on.
Pardon me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Rowell, could you approach very quickly? You look to have had some verbiage on this sheet of paper. Could you share? Is that?
Yeah, this is lifted directly from the original annexation agreement that the council voted on 6-1 back in 2013. And I'll read it directly. It says, "The MSTC entities shall encourage participation in the development of the mixed-use parcels by minority, women, and/or disadvantaged business owners." Full stop. That's what it says. What you guys voted on.
Okay.
You can take yes, you can take yes for an answer.
Yes. Well, you're okay with that, Ms. Lasso?
Yeah, it'll be in, yeah, because it'll be in whatever the motion is.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm just reciting the past.
Thank you, Mr. Rowell. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
All right, again, let me try to wrap up. First off, I want to thank everybody that had a role in participation in this.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Steph.
Okay. Yes, it's been a long going on. I know this is, like most projects, always reminds me of the Lincoln quote that I learned early on. It said that, Lincoln said that they were going to make all the people happy all the time. What we have in front of you tonight, and I'm just going to refer this to whoever's going to make the motion, you have a detailed site plan which deals specifically and narrowly with the proposed construction. As has been indicated by both planning staff and planning board, the approvals for the project have been done in years past. So, again, I think it's been a long-standing process and it's been going on, and hopefully we can move to some kind of collection. Did you want to make a motion, Mr.?
Yes, I would.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion that we postpone until March 19 when a new council person is seated, given the public outreach we've had.
Okay. Is there a second? Hearing no second, the motion dies. Mr. Gordon?
Okay, thank you for your comment, Mr. Steph. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move for approval of staff recommendation for the approval of this detailed site plan with staff conditions as amended by Councilmember Glass and Councilmember Trout. Councilmember Glass with the MBE and WBE component, and Councilmember Trout with the handicap parking spaces. And WMATA.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Marcos. All right, any questions on the motion? All in favor?
I'm asking, is this,
I'm sorry?
I know Mr. Steph he wanted to postpone to the 19th, but because that
motion's
motion
done.
is dead,
It's
so
done.
will he
You
vote
have
in this?
You have your motion
Yes.
right now, it's just been voted on.
Okay.
All in favor?
All in favor?
No.
Okay.
5-1.
5-1.
Motion carries.
All right.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move to adjourn.
can I get a second for that? Second by Mr. Marcos. Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Good night, everyone.
I'm sorry?
Don't we have a closed?
I'm sorry, Mayor. You have a closed session.
Oh, we do?
Oh, we do?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
Sorry.
All right, you want to move into executive
Yes.
session?
Thank you, everyone. Yes, I'd like to move to adjourn to a closed session to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter.
Seconded by Dr. Trout. Any question on the motion? All in favor? Aye.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.